and welcome to the ID Talk podcast. I'm Alex Perala. I'm here with my co-host, Tony Bitzionis. Hello, Tony.
Hello.
And we've got a great episode today. We had a conversation with Jonathan Drape-Comyn from Identity Week. We love those guys. They're a great team. And Jonny in particular has a very friendly football rivalry going with Tony that I don't
Not
understand.
a, it's not a rivalry.
Okay.
His team is much better. I'm just gonna put that right there, Johnny. Alex's words, not mine.
But in any case, Jonny is a really nice guy. He does sales for Identity Week. And we had a chat with him after Identity Week America. We were there and met him in person and the whole team. And we wanted to follow up after and just kind of learn a bit about what it all looks like from behind the curtain. And it was very informative, very it was a good way of like enlarging my perspective on how this whole industry operates.
Yeah,
Um,
well said.
yeah, so that's coming up, but before we get to that, uh, Tony, do you know what the Xinghuo BIF is?
I mean, it was in that article that you wrote last week that was very confusing. So no, I don't.
I didn't until I wrote that, but this is a piece of news I just want to highlight before we get to the conversation with Jonny. It's a little complicated, but I think people should pay attention to this, especially those in the industry who are working on technology related to large scale digital ID projects. So basically, the news story was this company in Malaysia, Zetrix. They announced that they launched a new identity verification service called ZCert or ZCert. And basically, it was just meant to authenticate digital IDs for Chinese nationals. And the way it works is it operates through a blockchain system from China called, and I'm really sorry about my pronunciation because I'm sure it's wrong, but I'll say Xinghuo BIF or Xinghuo BIF. But basically, this is a blockchain system designed by the Chinese government. And it's one of the most active blockchain platforms in the world, apparently. It does about 100 million blockchain transactions a day, according to my research. So it's huge. And basically, this Malaysian company has this digital ID service. They'll verify any nationals who have IDs on this blockchain. So who cares? A lot of people should care, and I'll try to explain why. I don't know exactly what this is going to be used for. It has a lot of potential applications, but this is purely hypothetical. But if you imagine like somebody from China wants to play in a like digital casino that's operated by a Malaysian company, they can just verify their identity through this service and it's on the Chinese blockchain. And like you can see the utility of that, and there's a lot of similar systems popping up around the world. But what's really notable is that this blockchain is China made. It's not just China made, but like made by the Chinese government. So in theory, well, I don't want to speculate too much because we just don't know, but like any technology made with the encouragement or participation of the Chinese government, there's a risk that they will be able to get access to it uh, in a way that's advantageous to them. So the way I envision this happening is like, and if we go back to my hypothetical example, let the person who is going online to play online poker through this Malaysian gambling platform, the government can see that they're doing that. Like the Chinese government can track what they're doing through their interactions with this online casino. So, like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not really saying it's good or bad, but it's a way of the Chinese government to like extend its control
Mhm.
to activities that are happening beyond its borders through this blockchain
Right.
system. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And sorry, quick question. So when you say like it could be a good thing, is that from what, like preventing financial fraud or helping people with gambling addiction? Is it?
Yeah,
Because
any of the
it's weird.
above.
It sounds like, oh, that sounds like surveillance, but I'm sure there are good uses for it that I'm just not considering off the bat.
Yeah, well, our government is interested in some of this kind of surveillance as well. So, um, like it might be that this person is gambling as a money laundering activity. So
Right.
they're trying to funnel money out of China in a way that's illegal, and the government would want to know about that. So that I think a lot of people would think of as like a legitimate um, use for this kind of surveillance. But it is, a lot of people would also say that's creepy. And again, I'm just speculating. Like, I don't know exactly how this stuff is going to be used, but when I wrote it up, I couldn't help but notice and point out that this news came very soon after an earlier news item about this Washington think tank, Carnegie. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. They very recently put out a paper that was urging the Quad, which is this alliance between the US and Japan and India and Australia. It was saying you guys should make digital public infrastructure like a key priority as a way to counter Chinese influence in that region. So they were like, if you can get um, like relatively open digital infrastructure promoted into these smaller countries around China, that's a way of preventing cheaper Chinese digital infrastructure from taking its place.
Right.
And so I guess part of that is digital ID and would be like, if only the Quad could get Malaysia to implement like a digital ID system that is of interest to Western democratic governments,
Mm.
then the people doing business in Malaysia wouldn't have to rely on a Chinese blockchain. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's all really complicated, and I feel like this is kind of a new thing that we're all having to learn about. But hopefully, listeners can kind of see why I wanted to highlight this. And it also made me think of earlier this year, we talked to Tech Five, and we were talking to the co-founder and CTO Rahul Parth about some of the stuff that they were doing in digital ID at like a national scale, and I asked him about the critique that comes from people who are worried about surveillance and authoritarianism and stuff like that. And he was basically like, the way that we have constructed this, it makes it harder for the government to surveil people. It's actually like, it's only going to make it harder for an authoritarian government to keep tabs on people because it has these privacy protections built in. So that really struck me at the time. And of course, I'm thinking about it now, reading about this latest stuff from China and Malaysia.
Interesting. Well, when you say speculating, I say giving the Chinese government some ideas. So we know who to blame if this all turns out to be true,
If anyone from the CCP is listening, I have a lot more ideas, and you can reach me at
Oh,
Alex.
that's it. We're done. We're done.
So
I
yeah,
knew it would eventually. I knew this podcast would eventually become a platform for your ideas for the CCP. Alex, I knew it.
so moving swiftly along, is there any news you wanted to highlight before we get to our chat with Jonny?
Yeah. I want to highlight our good friend Maxine Most, principal at Acuity Market Intelligence. Listeners of the show will know Maxine very well. Most people in the industry do, and Maxine and Acuity's latest Prism report is almost out. The preview is available now, and it's the government services report, and this follows the release of the financial services report in June and travel and hospitality report, which came out about a month ago. And the preview is available. We'll include a link in the episode description if you want to head on over there and take a look at it. You should. It's looks like it's going to be a really interesting one. They've all been really interesting. Lots of data, lots of just key insights in very easy to digest bites. I don't know if Max has said that in the past, or you have, but I'm stealing it. And a couple of the things to look forward to in it is something called the Prism Identity Hierarchy, which is going to be like a visual representation of how biometric identity solutions are at the core of government services, and there'll be original market forecasts that show potential opportunities for vendors in those spaces. So it's another kind of lens to view the full Prism through for this next report, which is coming out soon. And yeah, make sure you go and you download the preview and check it out.
Yeah. She's been sharing some of those visuals from the report. They're really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to see it evolve. I also have to say, like, I was no offense at all to Max and her team. I was skeptical that she would get this report out by October because the last one came out like late
It's like,
summer.
yeah, yeah.
And I was, and she, like, she had said the next one's coming in October. And I was like, how's that possible? Because, like, they're comprehensive, they're huge reports, but
Yeah.
she seems to be, like, on track. So
When
kudos.
I saw that the report was almost out and the preview was out, there was a moment of panic as to what month we were in. I was like, oh no, I've done it again.
Unfortunately, it is October.
Yeah, yeah. Um, anyway, that's all that I have to say. Do you want to get into this chat with Jonny?
Yeah, I just one little note going into it. Timing wise, we recorded this, I think, right at the end of near the end of September.
Mhm.
So I think during the chat there will be a reference to Identity Week America having happened like a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
But here we are in October, and Identity Week Asia is coming right up. It's October 22nd to 23rd in Singapore. I would love to go to Singapore at that time of year, but alas, I'm tied to my desk here. So as you are as well, Tony, I know. But
Yep.
anyone who can, I strongly encourage you to go and attend. But yeah, that throat clearing out of the way, let's get to it. We're now very happy to be joined by Jonny from Identity Week. Jonny, we like you. We met you in person a couple weeks ago. But for those who don't know you and haven't met you, maybe you could just give a quick introduction, what your role is, how long you've been with Identity Week, and we can go from there.
Yes, absolutely. That's no problem at all. I really appreciate it and always love talking to you guys. I'm Jonny. I'm the head of sales for Identity Week America. My role really is I have responsibility for Identity Week America, for the exhibition floor, for our sponsors and our exhibitors as well. I've been working on the identity team for 2 years, but I've been at Terrapin for coming up to 5 years now. So I'm definitely much more of an events person than I am an identity person. But I think that's probably the way it should be, to be completely honest.
Uh, Jonny, so like Alex said, we got to meet you in person in Washington earlier this month, and it was great. It was a really fun experience for us, and we kind of got to see just how much work you and your team put in to these events. I mean, I can't begin to imagine how much work it is leading up to them, let alone the days of. But what, aside from just being exhausted when they're over, how do you reflect on the event itself? Like, what were your key takeaways from this past one, for example?
key takeaway number one is that Identity Week is growing in popularity. I think all events across the industry are growing in popularity. There is a demand there. In fact, not even just within the identity industry, there's a demand, or there has always been a demand for events and face-to-face meetings in general. Specifically to Identity Week, the attendees grew this year again by 20%, which was similar to the year before. The amount of sponsors is growing, the amount of exhibitors are growing, the interest from buyers and solutions is growing, and then also as well from even visitors to the event as well, that their interest in the content is growing. We're seeing that our theatres are growing every year in terms of the amount of seats that we have to put in there. The seminars are growing, the roundtables. There's such a huge amount of general interest, and I think probably one of the other key observations is that maybe is that everything's moving towards more of a digital identity solutions on both sort of the vendor side, but also the buyers and the attendee sides, and that's of course new digital identity solutions, but it's also pre-existing solutions that are becoming more physical too. A lot of the emphasis from a lot of the companies that we speak to is that they're always, and this is not necessarily specific to the identity industry now that I'm about to say it out loud, is how can we do this better? How can we be more efficient? How can we do this safer? How can things be more secured? Those are a lot of the discussions that are happening at the moment, and a lot of the content points are really all wrapped up in everything that is digital. And then I guess if I've split this into three parts, the other part as well is probably the attendees this year. We noticed it last year at Identity Week, and we noticed it in 2022 as well. But I guess in 2022 we didn't know whether it was a one-off or not. But we've definitely seen such a big growth in enterprise and enterprise and corporate attendees. Being based in DC, we've always had a fantastic senior government presence that has always attended, but the amount of banks that are now joining the show, the amount of financial institutions we've seen attended in recent years has grown so much. And then there's other sort of verticals too. There's retail, e-commerce, telcos, healthcare, venues, sports teams, airlines. The list kind of goes on. So I think those are probably the main ones off the top of my head.
Yeah, that we noticed there was like a pretty diverse array of different kinds of organizations when we were there. Like obviously a lot of vendors, but like we were situated at our booth very close to the FBI, which was just kind of an odd experience for us, not really used to having a booth at shows. So that was cool. But that kind of leads to my next question, which is maybe a little weird, but is there a different like vibe between the different shows? Because you've got these major shows in different locations around the world. Do you notice at them that there's like kind of a different feel, or are they all basically like that? And when I say basically like that, I mean good. Like it was fun. Like the vibe was very positive and it had a lot of energy. To be honest, it was a little exhausting at times because there's so much going on, but like in a good way. So yeah, I'm just curious if are things like more demure in the UK or in Europe, or is it what's it like?
It's similar. It is I think the main focus of particularly America and Europe is what we are trying to do and what we are sort of getting better at doing, is bringing the whole ecosystem together under one roof. And we what we really want, and hopefully you'll see it on the panels with content and things like that, is that there should be solution providers there. There should be end users from corporates and enterprises there. There should be end users from government there. There should be regulators there. There should be industry and associations. There should be consultancies, everything like that. Everyone should be there. That's really the main aim. And I would say that both events really sort of cover the same themes and topics. However, Europe has a stronger focus on secure credentials compared with the US event. I think probably one of the main reasons for that is probably stating the obvious, is that in Europe you have 49 different governments that attend the event, and all 49 have a different passport, whereas in the US, you have one government, and we do have the Canadian government do attend as well, but for that purpose, there's probably a clear difference there. And then, of course, Europe as well. Europe has a focus on biometrics, on IAM, on authentication, verification, fraud, which are the key areas in the US. And then audience-wise in the US, I think probably both shows incorporate an international element too, from speakers, guests joining us from other parts of the region on the program. There's certainly, what I wouldn't say is that you come to the US event to find out about what's happening in the US, and you go to the European event to find out what's happening about Europe. I think both events have a really nice balance at the moment of incorporating things from a global perspective. And we've seen lots of different partnerships from all of our events come from different countries and different counterparts meeting one another. I think that answers the question. Does it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, fantastic.
Just going back a little bit, I mean, you just mentioned that the events, though there are like obvious differences, that similar structure, similar kind of way that they're put together. But how do you guys work together to put these events? Like, I'm obsessed with watching other people work. I think it's interesting, and I have people in my life who are in the event space, and I know that it can be insane at times. But just curious, after having witnessed it and experienced it, how do you guys work together to organize and put these events on?
We have to work together really closely. There's so many different parts of. I think this, just like it is in any company that you don't know about. There's so many different parts of an event that, or any industry or anything that you just don't know about. And I think probably from our perspective, most people at Identity Week probably know me and probably know Molly, who does the production and looks after all of the speakers. But there's far more to Identity Week than just me and Molly. There, we have a whole marketing team who work. We all work 15 months out every year. We're booking venues 24, 48 months out. So we already know and are looking at Identity Weeks in 2026, 2027, things like that. We have a marketing team. There is of course a sales team. There's a production team. There is a networking team. There is a VIP and guesting team. There is a startup team. And then probably most importantly, the people that never get mentioned, although they're really, of any team that you couldn't do without, is the operations team, who really do literally make it all happen. And then we have our general manager, Janine, who's been working on Identity Week and all of its previous iterations since the very beginning. All of those people have to work very, very closely with one another. And I've worked in other roles in other industries and other sales teams, perhaps, as a good example, where some people maybe need to, I don't know, stand on each other in order to get ahead, or things like that. Whereas I think one of the best things about working in events is that all of those teams that I've mentioned, we all need each other to do that all of our jobs to the best of our ability, so that we can do our job to the best of our ability and put on a great event. So That's probably a very long-winded answer of what I said in the first instance, which was we all have to work very, very closely with one another every day for about 15 months, and then we get a week off, and then we do it again.
Got some sweet downtime.
Yeah, exactly.
I was really impressed, sincerely, because when we got to Washington, your team was there. I assume that's like the whole team, or at least a large part of it, but still, like, not as many people as I imagined. And I was like, these people all must be doing an incredible amount of work given the size of this team. So, I mean, kudos to you. I don't know how I can't even imagine what it's like to organize an event of that size. And it's wild to me to hear you say that you're planning some of these as much as 2 years out. So, like, how was that? How were you doing that during the pandemic? Because what I've been hearing, especially heading into this event, a lot of the vendors we were talking to were like, yeah, it's like there's a lot of buzz because it feels like things are coming back after the lockdowns. So I'm just curious to hear what it was like. How did you navigate it? Because there was so much uncertainty about when life would quote unquote go back to normal, like what was that like for you? In as much as you can talk about it.
Stressful, very, very stressful. I think probably uh, just like everybody related to everything in the pandemic was at first it was a case of okay, we have to maybe postpone events, and but it'll be fine in a couple of months, and then it'll be fine in 6 months, and then of course it never ever got fine until after maybe 2 or 3 years again, and we just made a huge shift of moving everything to online, and that was probably very reactive. I can only speak for the teams that I worked in, but organized chaos in a way. But there is a book called "Never Let a Good Crisis Go to Waste." Not related to COVID. It's more related to very sinister things. It's completely true in the sense of events. We learn how to become more efficient. We things like using our events apps and things like that, which are now a really core essential part of events. We now incorporate in our events now. But what we, at least in Terrapin, never got away from was the fact that things would go back to face, and the best thing is face. I really don't think there's anything more valuable. We actually had a comment from our attendees, and one of our attendees at Identity Week, and obviously particularly in the US, lots of companies still do lots of work from home and things like that, and people aren't necessarily even today going back into the office anywhere near in the same way that they used to. And he said that some of the people he's been trying to chase for 1 year, 2 years to get a hold of, particularly in government, and actually coming to an event is the only way for me to meet that person face to face. And I think like the core aspects of events are still there and were there during COVID, so it didn't necessarily change that much. Like your branding and your marketing and your speaking and lead generation and roundtables, but you really can't put a price on face to face. And perhaps with some industries, it might not matter so much. I'm trying to think of an industry, and ironically, I can't. But with identity and topics like facial recognition, biometrics, access management, which is all which is all wrapped up both literally and figuratively under the umbrella of trust. Face to face without, or trust without face to face, is really really essential. So we worked really hard, but we never really got away from the fact that this is events are all about meeting people and doing business and networking face to face.
Yeah, that was certainly true for us. I mean, Alex and I got to meet a handful of people who we'd been speaking with for, in some cases, years, and met virtually. But it was like meeting a celebrity, getting to see them in person, be like, hey, there you are, you're real, I'm real. But yeah, that was I think what I was looking forward to the most was meeting the people who I had known or had been emailing with, and just putting like a three-dimensional face to the two-dimensional. Yeah. Speaking of attending the events and just how important it is to get FaceTime, like it's fairly obvious to us why vendors would want to attend and speak, but how do you guys work to get the government agencies to come to your shows? I mean, as Alex mentioned, the FBI was there, and I mean, I'm sure there were a lot more, but you also alluded to in Europe how you have 69, 59 different governments there. How do you get the agencies and the representatives from those various countries to attend?
Yeah, I think probably the first thing is that we obviously have a team who work on all of these things and partnerships and relationships and things like that. But I think probably first of all is that they want to come. And as a salesperson myself, sometimes sales is somewhat of a, I don't know, taboo subject, or nobody likes getting messages from salespeople or things like that. But I guarantee you that people attend Identity Week, particularly government, because they are genuinely interested in seeing what new solutions are out there that can help them with their job. So we do have long-standing relationships too with government departments. We've been doing this for 20 plus years now under various iterations, and even though it was before my time, I know that Identity Week couldn't be what it was today without some of the partnerships with specific government departments that helps get this going. And I think if you look at our keynote speakers this year, the likes of CBP, TSA, really sort of key departments that are sort of a core contribution to Identity Week. And then on top of that too, we have a production team, which is of course led by Molly in the United States, that just work tirelessly to acquire speakers, to go to events, to learn, to meet people. Because also as well, a lot of people that come along, whether it is a speaking or attending or networking, are often coming along for the same reasons to an extent that solution providers are, and that is to just connect with people and learn. And then also as well, I guess feedback and referrals. One thing that sort of we're a big belief in sort of the snowballing effect, and if we do have sponsors who have customers, then we want them to invite their customers along. If we do have people who are looking to meet with other people, then we will do our best to try and get them to come along too. So a lot of emphasis goes on sponsors and attendees, and then probably last, again off the top of my head, we work with an awful lot of partners like yourselves, but we work in very close conjunction with the IBIA. We work in close conjunction with the likes of, if I think about the partners this year, DSA, Document Security Alliance, City Hub, Kantara, Women and Identity. I'm positive I'm forgetting someone, so please forgive me who that may be. But we really rely too on some of the key partnerships within the industry, because we are a private events company, and so we those relationships with partners who are actually within the industry, as much as we would love for ourselves to be also categorized as being a part of the industry, are just as essential to acquiring speakers and government agencies and banks and financial institutions and things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I anticipated the part of that answer, which is that, the government, like people from the government and other groups, non-vendors, they actually want to be there. Which, and I'm sure it's like us, like when we have non-vendors on our podcast, we like, they want to be there. They want to get a message out. Like in our case, they want to get a message out and we want to talk to them about it. But I'm sure with an event like yours, they want to see what solutions are available and they want to learn. And I would just add that, again, going back to the value of having like an in-person event, for us, it was pretty valuable to get a lot of like off the record chatter from different people who we met there, and things that you might not hear, that might not come out over like a press release, but in like, someone just face to face is willing to tell you like, what, this is what's going on at this company that you've been writing about or whatever. And like, I'm sure if you're working in the government, you want to talk, you want to find whatever solution it is you're looking for, but then you also want to talk to the competitors and be like, I was just talking to these guys over at this company. You have a similar product. What's wrong with theirs or whatever? So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Part of the appeal, I would guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I know you're in the UK as we record this. It's the end of the day where you are, so you've been very generous with your time. So we'll just have.
It's the start of the day. Actually, it's 5 p.m. on a Friday night, so it's the start of the day.
That's the right attitude.
It's fair enough, and we don't want to keep you from getting to the start of your day. So I'll just I got one more question, which is just we're heading into 2025. It's the middle of the roaring 20s, and I'm just curious if you have any thoughts where you see the biometrics and identity industry going at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. As I said, I worked at Terrapin for 5 years now, and I've worked on loads of events across USA, Europe, Asia, and loads of industries as well: business, finance, HR, telecoms, aviation, now identity. And I think one of the key things that for me, from an events and industry point of view, that stands out with the identity industry is the importance of partnerships, sharing technology, how lots of different solutions or technologies are intertwined in other solutions. At other events that I've worked on, I've seen there's a very clear sort of line between solution providers and then end users and buyers. And with the identity industry, I think if there's one thing that I've learned is that partnerships, system integrators, they're all essential components to all successful business models within the industry. And I think as the industry evolves, that's only going, at least how I see it, is only going to grow more. The amount of, for example, sponsors and exhibitors each year that find it so important that their partners are there, or that they have a booth space next to their partners, things like that. And I think we also see now lots of course, it's always been the case, but perhaps a little bit more at the moment, is there's lots of mergers and acquisitions in the industry that are going on all over the place. And I know that from an Identity Week perspective, that the need for all companies to make money and sell solutions is of course very high, but I think it's almost impossible to do without having the right partners. And so, while of course there's lots of sales teams out there that need to get out and sell their solutions to end users and things like that, the main thing that I've seen, at least through Identity Week, is that it's almost impossible to do without having very good partnerships within the industry.
Well said.
Yep.
Well, Jonny, it's been a pleasure as always. Thank you for talking with us. And again, thanks to you and the whole team for putting on a great event.
We can't wait to see you again soon.
Thanks, Jonny.
Yeah, same.